Hello, everybody. Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning. I'm going to step away for 1 second and refresh my coffee. Libby's carry on?
I have not seen her.
No, okay. I don't know. I'm just thinking because she has to call everybody to order if Liza's here.
Yeah, Liza's here.
Jen. I don't think Jen is.
I haven't seen Jen.
Okay.
Or Carly.
I'm sure they'll join, although not required to either, because I know they had some other meetings this morning.
Michelle, Libby can call the whole group to order.
Perfect.
It is. 4 of them.
Thank you, Liza.
I'm still admitting people, so I think we'll give it just another minute or two before we get started.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Dr. Austin.
Hello, Dr. Austin. Hey, Dr. Jamie, everybody.
Good morning.
Hello, Dr. I didn't see you there, Dr. Venus. Hello. And I forgot my glasses. I will be back once again.
Libby, I can take care of the waiting room while you are
Okay.
bringing everybody to the order.
Okay. Okay, so welcome all. Thank you for coming. This is a community outreach subcommittee meeting with the participation of the full school committee. And I'd like to call the subcommittee meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. And who would like to call the school committee meeting to order?
I think you can.
Libby, you just called us to order as the subcommittee with the full school committee. You don't need to call them.
Okay. All right. So this meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to an order issued by the Governor of Massachusetts dated March 12, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the Town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with the Massachusetts General Law 30A 20F so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. Is anybody recording this meeting? Okay. I'll move on.
It's truly, we're recording.
Thank you all for coming. Today's virtual coffee is one of a series of coffees that was instituted last year to give Dr. Austin an opportunity to meet directly with parents and staff, to share information, answer questions, and to learn more about the community. Dr. Austin will provide some general information and then we'll take questions. We have scheduled an hour and do have to end promptly at 10 a.m., but we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. To ask a question, please use the raise hand button in the participants tab. As a quick reminder, when called on, please turn on your video for those in the audience who use assisted hearing technology. State your name and address, and please keep your questions to 2 minutes. If we are unable to get to your questions this morning, there is an opportunity to visit with Dr. Austin tomorrow, as we have another virtual coffee scheduled at 7 p.m. tomorrow night. And with that, Dr. Austin, please take the mic.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Libby. I appreciate that little intro. And welcome, everyone. And I truly appreciate the opportunity to be able to take this opportunity with all of you to answer some of your questions and to have you ask those that maybe I haven't seen yet, share ideas, etc. So I think this is an important process. I always enjoy the coffees. I know there are lots of questions. I don't have a lot to say this morning other than I'm going to turn it over to you in just a minute. I do want to say I don't think, Libby, that you caught that Harbor Media is actually recording. And it's also on live transcript. So in case that anybody didn't catch that, it is being recorded by Harbor Media today. So I just wanted to say that. So again, welcome everyone. I do have a number of administrators that I've asked to join me today because I don't have all the answers, and those that are in in the trenches, so to speak, every day, I may call on to assist me. And I thank all the administrators and the directors, et cetera, for coming in and joining us today as well. So with that, I'm going to just turn it over and say, let's take some questions.
Okay, the first hand I see is Laura Donnelly.
Good morning, Dr. Austin. How are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm well, thank you.
Good.
I have 3 questions. The first is there's been talk about on a town level, prioritizing educators with vaccinations. Is that something being discussed among you and the Board of Selectmen and the Health Department? The second one is, and this is kind of outside your purview, but would you be open to it? Can the school committee start providing a update of reopening at the beginning of each school committee? I know you don't set the agenda, but a discussion of things that have gone on over the past 2 weeks, not just discussions, but actions. And then the third question is about the high school schedules, in particular for next year. I know it's sort of an academic study of having these block classes, but I'm hoping that we're finding that they're just not working, because I can't imagine my 14-year-old sitting in a 75-minute class. And that's even outside of COVID. I know that has been a study of, why don't we try block classes with high school students? So I'm hoping that that's not the case, and that Hingham is not looking to pursue that even outside of COVID.
Great. Thank you for your questions. And given the amount of time, I'm going to try to answer each one. First of all, the vaccine. I have regular communications with Sue Sarney, and I want to clarify, she's the health department. She's not the Board of Health. She's the health department. So I have regular conversations with Sue Sarney, and we talk about vaccines probably close to every single day. And she knows that I've asked very clearly to identify when and how fast we can vaccinate our educators. And she's subject to what the state rollout is, which is, we know we started phase 2 that is just opening up now. In fact, the town provided a link to for folks 75 and above to now sign up for that. We have actually done some educators in phase 1 already. We have our nurses that have already been vaccinated, and now we're working on speech and language therapists and behavioral folks that are fitting under phase 1. So they're going to get the opportunity too at this point, and can sign up as soon as we have vaccine in town. But we do have a plan of how we're going to vaccinate our folks as soon as there's a vaccine and when she can open that up. I'm hoping that happens very soon, certainly within the month of February. Of course, we're all under subject to whatever vaccine comes our way. And I know that as a state, we're frustrated. We want to see that move faster. But I can assure you, I am knocking on that door every day, and she probably doesn't want to see my text or phone calls anymore to make that happen. But I think that's absolutely critical. I also say, and you didn't ask about it for testing, one of the things that I think is absolutely critical for us to be able to move forward and get our students back into more in person is to set that foundation. That foundation includes testing of our employees, which we actually rolled out about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and that's going incredibly well. We have a very good system in place for testing our employees, and we moved it faster from just elementary all the way to involving all of our employees that want to be tested. And that rollout has gone much better than expected and much smoother. We are now engaged in a process of pool testing for students. We are about ready to roll out something to parents probably by the end of this week. I'm hoping to do that. I have a meeting later today with some of our folks to look at what absolutely has to happen next to get us. I would love to be able to pilot next week a group of students to be able to pilot that process of pool testing and then be able to follow that with a Buy Next Now immediate rapid test that we will also employ at the same time. So those are really critical pieces that I believe we're going to have in place. If not just next week, it'll be hopefully right after the break and get those in. And, there's always logistics, and we've got those logistics we're working out. But we're spending a lot of time and energy on that, and believe that's the foundation for us to move forward. So when you put the testing in there and then we get the vaccine, that really puts us in that place that we want to be able to move forward. They are game changers. There's no question about that. And that's probably the most excited I've been for a long time about possible change that's coming in the future. And I hope that you guys share that with me. So that's the vaccine piece. The second part of the, the opening, I don't have any problem adding that to my, update every week. I was doing that for quite a while. And then we were at a flat for a while, and there isn't much to report. I think that that's going to change relatively soon as we continue to really think about and talk about increasing in-person learning. So I don't have any problem adding that to what I do. I'll certainly add to my report, assuming that the chair wants me to do that. And I will talk to the chair about that. And the third one is the high school schedules. I'm not aware that there's any major shift to thinking that if we're back full time next year, that we're going to shift to any kind of different schedule that wasn't in place last year. But I want to make sure, is Rick Swanson online to double check that with me, or one of the directors?
Yes, I'd agree with you on that, Paul. We haven't had any discussions about wanting to switch over permanently to a block schedule. My hope would be that we'd be returning to a schedule that looks a lot like the schedule we had last year and have had for quite a few years now, 57-minute periods, 7-period schedule where one drops every day. I think most people here have been very satisfied with that more traditional model.
Thank you for your questions, Laura.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So next I see Jessica Gibney.
Hi, thanks. Jessica Gibney, 25 Sherwood Road. I asked this last night at the school committee coffee, and it seemed like it was more appropriate for this group. But just speaking specifically for elementary, we had our first report card, so the first actual grades to look at. And I know that I've got a student who, a third grader who last year at this time was all 3s. This year, all 2s, and she's a ready to learn, receptive to instruction, pleasure to have in class kid. For me, just looking at it, that's pretty drastic, and I see her beating herself up for not understanding things that I think she would understand better if she had more in-person learning. And I'm just curious how much of this report card data is being looked at to inform in-person time and negotiations.
Great question, Jessica, and thank you for sharing that with us. I can tell you immediately, I know that that's exactly what's informing our moving forward and what our students need. But I want to call on our elementary principals to assist that. Mary Eastwood, I can see you on the screen, so that means that you get to answer.
No problem. I can assure you that we are using all of that data to figure out what we need to do as we go forward, and also what we're going to need to do into the very far future to make sure that we bring our kids to the level that each one is reaching their potential. So we absolutely are using that data. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you, Mary. And if I can just say that if you've watched any of the budget presentations that I've done, we have an extensive ask this year, particularly in the area of literacy and math for elementary folks, for elementary students, for this very purpose. We do anticipate that we're going to have some work to do to help students and to move forward. So that's the kind of data we're also using to explain to the select board and the AdCom why we need to add those positions. Your data is incredibly important in that process. So thank you for the question.
Okay, thank you. Next is Chris Sigovich.
Hey, good morning. So I realize there's a number of factors that are preventing students from going back in person on a more full-time basis. And I would say, though, I think there's a growing perception that the union is one of the bigger roadblocks in getting students back full-time. So you just talked about your excitement around the vaccine. Obviously, we're all excited about it and hope that it puts an end to this terrible virus. I would be curious to hear, Dr. Austin, your perspective on if we are able to successfully vaccinate our teachers as a starting point, and we realize students, given their age, are going to be perhaps months, if not into next year, down the line of getting vaccinated. I'd be curious to hear your perspective on if we are able to successfully get our teachers vaccinated. Is your expectation that in your negotiations with the union that they return to school on a full-time basis? If not this year, at the very latest by September of this coming school year. Thank you.
And thank you for that question. I know there's a lot of information out there, a lot of discussion about the HEA and if they're blocking us, et cetera. And I want to be clear, you know, the HEA has a job to do in its own. It respects the wants of teachers. It makes sure that the teachers' needs are met, et cetera. That's their function. I also want to be clear that I really believe that the HEA leadership, as well as the teacher, want our students back. And so part of my job is to create an environment of safety that people feel like they're being heard, the concerns of the teachers are being met, and that we have all the safety procedures. So I think there's a possibility that there are game changers coming, and those are, you know, regular conversations are happening between the school committee, the administration, and the HEA. One of the things that we're doing, and I know we've spoken about this a lot, we do meet very regularly. In fact, I have 4 meetings next week with HEA leadership on different units. I've had 2 or 3 this week already. These are things that we're continually talking about and what conditions. And I know it's frustrating to the community that you don't necessarily see what the proposals are or see what we're talking about. But I want to assure you that we continue to talk about what conditions we have to meet in order to bring students back successfully. I want our students back. I want to be very clear. I hear you. I hear all the parents. I hear our teachers who want our students back. It is that last thing I think about before I put my head on that pillow at night. And the very first thing I think about in the morning are those kids. It drives me to what I do. It's the reason I do this. It's the reason we're all working very hard. And so we care about your students, and that has to be at the forefront. We do have a plan. I have a plan that I'll be sharing very soon with the association, again, of some different ideas that I can't share publicly yet because that would be unfair to them. But I need to do that, and we have a meeting coming up very soon. And we do have some thoughts about what fall looks like. Right now, I believe that we will be back full time. Now, if that doesn't happen, we do have to have a plan B. We have to take what we're doing now, learn what has worked really, really well, and implement that, and then address those issues that haven't. Those will all be done in case something changes and it's drastic. I, like you, hope that that's not the case in the fall. We need to be in. We need our students in front of our teachers. Our teachers want them in front of them. I have to continue to work hard to find a way to make that happen for both sides. And I want to be clear, the HEA and the association, the administration and school committee are not at odds. We just have to work out a lot of different details, and there's a lot. And most of us are negotiating things that we would have never had to negotiate in the past. I would say we haven't skipped a month of negotiations for the last 13 or 14 months. We've been at this for a very long time. And so, because we were already negotiating the successor contract before COVID ever hit, we've probably negotiated more in the last year than anybody would in 10 years. And so, you know, that's trying, but there's work that's going on. It is collaborative. Doesn't mean we always agree on everything, but it's collaborative. And I really hope that the narrative isn't that one is blocking another, but the narrative really should be that we're working together to try to figure out the many barriers and obstacles that are in the way. And we'll continue to do that. Thanks for the question.
Okay, thank you. Next is Becky Leary.
Hi there, can you hear me?
I can, Becky. Good morning.
Hey. I just have, I guess mine's related to the middle school. On last night's call, it was mentioned that 2 of the maybe 5 biggest hurdles to get the kids back include space in our dated buildings. It was also mentioned that maybe 15% of our kids are fully remote, and I would argue it's probably more, because I know at the high school it's over 25%, but I haven't heard from the principals for the middle and elementary. And I don't think that includes students that have left the Hingham Public Schools. And given the feasibility test that you did back in the fall, I believe that it showed that the middle school could have 12 to 14 students in the class. And since the middle school is our newest building, the air quality is state of the art. The windows open. We have all those extra spaces, the auditorium, DLT room, etc. And then your reopening plan states, effective January, more students could be coming back to both cohorts, maintaining the social distancing. If they've dropped a full letter grade, or if any social and emotional concerns have been identified. But currently, the middle school's current measure is if the students are failing their core classes. So I'm just wondering, why this policy is different versus your reopening plan. Thank you.
I want to make sure I understand what your question is. I'm a little lost on the question. So is it, which part of that question do you want answered? I don't know if somebody can rephrase that for me, that I can understand it better.
I'm just wondering that if effective January 11th, if students have dropped a letter grade or are being identified with social and emotional problems or concerns, remote learning is just not effective for them, if those students should be allowed to come back to both cohorts. But the current measure at the middle school, I'm being told, is that they have to be significantly failing their core classes to be able to come back.
I think there's, if you're asking about the MOA that we agreed to with the association allowed for the principals to, in collaboration with teachers, move students back into the classroom who had either had some social emotional concerns or the letter grade. I'm not sure I'm not aware that that's been applied in a different standard. In fact, I know from that point, there's about 30 at the middle school that have been added and 50 to the high school that have been added since that time. So that's 80 students. And so we want to fill those slots if we can. And the actual, when you're talking about, Allison, I know that Derek's not on, but is that accurate, Allison?
Yeah, we're really taking it case by case and looking at the needs of the students and then figuring out which classes they can fit into and which classes are at capacity right now. We've also built in an option of remote access when classes are full so that kids can actually go into a separate classroom and access their math class, ELA class, whatever it may be, from a separate classroom when their math class, for example, is full. So we have a couple different options, and it's sort of a rolling process. We're looking at cases as they come up. We're talking to teachers and teaching teams to see who might need to fill those slots and kind of taking it from there. So I hope that clarifies a little bit.
It does. Thank you.
To add to that, this is David from the middle school.
Thank you, David.
Not so much at the benchmark isn't a failing grade. We're looking at students who have taken a significant drop-off since term 1 moving into term 2. We're looking at more of a bigger picture in the grades, not necessarily a student who's failing one class or failing across the board. And as was mentioned, the social emotional is a big part of it, combined with the grades. And as Allison mentioned, space in the classroom is our most important factor.
Thank you. And I'm just going to speak really quickly to the number of students who are out in remote only. For the elementary level, and I'm going to do a presentation on this on Monday night at the school committee meeting. But for the elementary level, we're at about 8% on average, 8.5% maybe on average. At the middle school, it's about 15%. And you are right that it's much higher at the high school level. As students can certainly access their online learning because we're live streamed at both of those environments. We're live streaming our courses, so students who are at home are getting the same thing that students are getting in class, and so that's something we need to look at. Our enrollment right now is down by 9% total for the year, which is pretty consistent with a lot of districts, particularly in more affluent areas where people have more choices. We're down about 300 and I'm just doing the top of my math off the top of my head, a little 350 in that range. I'll do a little more detail on that on Monday night. About 160 of those are homeschool applications that were new this year. We would anticipate them to return. We would have had some anyway that go to private. We've had a little more private, obviously, than normal. And so when you add the next year, when you add what I would anticipate a much larger kindergarten class with those students that come back from the homeschooling environment, we would be probably pretty close to our normal enrollment. It's going to be very close, and that doesn't even count if the students who have gone to private return or not, and hopefully they do. So we're watching that very closely. But thank you for the questions.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to remind people to please turn on their video when they're speaking. And I'll call on Sarah Doggett next. Please turn on your video. Thank you.
Good morning. Hello, this is Sarah Doggett, 81 Baxter Street. Good morning. I'm curious to know more about Wednesdays and where we are with trying to get the cohorts in on alternating times to get at least a few more days a year back in for these children to be in. So cohort A could go in on one Wednesday, and the next Wednesday cohort B would go in.
Yeah, that's a great question again, and I want to remind people where we're at, and we hear a lot of thank you for that. First of all, right now at this point, we do have kindergarten that's 5 days per week. They're attending 4 hours a day. So although we're not charging anyone for a 2/3 kindergarten program, because we're running a little bit more than a half, obviously, of what's required and a full. So we're not charging the full this year, but we are running a 4-hour kindergarten program per day. So those children are in all week long. Then we started grades 1 and 2. There are alternating cohorts right now on Wednesdays. That's going very well. And I think and we decided all this, we started negotiating, if you recall, back on October 19th, when I gave a presentation to the school committee and talked about bringing all of our students back in after January, after the break. And in fact, we were one of the faster ones in the region to come out with a plan to say, this is what I'd like to do, and I'd like to bring in students elementary. And we were talking about full elementary back in, even then, to begin to negotiate. We did negotiate that, and obviously the hard part for us, we started negotiating in early November, and things kind of broke loose. I think we all know that. November 2nd, the governor put another stay-at-home order. We ended up in surges and went from 100 cases a day to 6,000 while we're trying to negotiate, which really put a damper on a lot of people's safety thoughts about how do we get in and out of this safely. And so we did tie it up to some metrics that I know is the point of contention in the region. And part of that is you give and take everything. In order to get kindergarten, first and second in, you got to do something. How do I get the rest of them in and making people feel comfortable with those things? I will say that we'll continue to talk about Wednesdays. I'm continuing every 2 weeks that I meet with the association. We talk about how do we move forward. We do have that agreement, so we can't unilaterally. Nobody can just stop and say, yeah, we had an agreement, that's great, you did it in good faith, and now we're going to do this. We can't really do that unilaterally without causing, a law case. That's the law. We had an agreement, and so, but it doesn't mean we don't talk about them, and we don't talk about how do we improve that. And I think there were some game changers. When we started negotiating this, there were no vaccines on the horizon. They might have been a horizon, but we didn't know what that was going to look like. Testing wasn't available. Things that, from that point, we've made sure that all of our elementary schools have air purifiers. We send a person into every room every single day to test the air quality. That's happening every day. We ensure that all of our teachers had PPE. We ensured that, now we have testing involved. They were talking about testing. We gave them testing. We made sure that's happened. I've made sure that's happened. And we're one of the only schools in the region that have actually done that. And now we hear we need to test our students. Well, that's what we're going to do next. And so all of these things are going into play so that we can continue to say, I need to move these kids forward. And I want to be really clear, Sarah, I agree with you. I want our students here. I want them in. I'm not going to stop trying. I'm not going to stop advocating. Neither is the HEA. We're just going to keep working till we get this right and get them in. That has to be our primary focus right now. That is my primary focus every single day. And again, I'm not going to repeat it. Well, I'm going to probably anyway. Sorry, I'm going to repeat it. It's the last thing I think about and the first thing I think in the morning. How do we do this and how do we make it happen? So I'm hoping that that is changing very, very soon, and we're going to keep on working on it until we do.
I appreciate what everyone is doing behind the scenes, and I know there's many, many steps, so thank you. And I'll move along to let other people ask questions, but I do want to say I'm happy that there's elementary school students going. My family went to foster school, but I'm just not feeling that my middle schooler or my high schooler are making any progressions in movement of being back in school, or anything has changed. So I'll leave it at that, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Liz Klein.
Morning, thank you. I have two questions related to space. One, I know we've been talking about the middle school is about 15% remote right now, and with the flexibility and fluidity of the situation, it's hard to plan around that. So I'm wondering if we can consider at this point asking families to commit to going full remote or in person, because that data, I think, would give us a better idea of if we can get those numbers down to 13 to 19 per classroom. So that's one consideration. The other is regarding the pool testing, which is great news. I'm so glad we're moving forward with that. Are there specific metrics associated with that we're working towards? For example, if the positivity rate is below X percent, do we move to 3-foot spacing, or is there some sort of goal that we're working towards related to the testing?
Thank you, Liz. I appreciate that, and congratulations, by the way, on your run, and I wish you luck in your campaign.
Thank you. I'm just here as a parent today.
I know that. I know. I'll qualify that with you. Thank you. Anyway, a couple of things. One is you just hit on a part of what we are always very concerned about. Whatever we do, what do we have to do? And I know we have this at the elementary, 8.5% of our students who are in remote, and at the middle school, 15%. If we make a change, we have to account for the fact that they can return at any time. So that is something that's always weighing on our mind. And in fact, just this morning, I was in very early this morning going over numbers and saying, okay, if I do this and I move this, then what happens to that, right? And when I'm trying to figure out ways, how do we meet that without disrupting everybody and trying to find a way if that were to return. Now, I think there's a reality that not everybody's going to return. I think there's also a reality if we were to go in, and I'm saying if we were to go in all of a sudden full time and everybody's back in, some aren't going to feel comfortable at 3 feet. I already know that. People have told me that. So I might have some people remove themselves and go remote. And I might have people who go from remote to in person. I just don't know that, but it is something. In fact, I'd already started thinking this morning, or making more concrete. We need to have probably a survey for our remote families right now, just to get a sense of who would be coming in if we chose, or staying remote. Now, I can't hold them. I can't hold them accountable to that. They can change that in a heartbeat, and I have to account for that somehow. But I think that's important. The other part of that is transportation. We didn't talk about transportation, but there's no way, as DESE doesn't reduce its standards for what I have to transport, there's no way I can offer all of our elementary students at one time to come in. And so there's going to have to be a point, if we are coming in, that parents are going to have to commit, and we're going to have to kind of skirt that rule a little bit to say, parents, I need you to transport. Now, I think personally, I think that's a doable thing in town. I think absolutely people are doing that, which creates another problem, unfortunately, of how do we manage all the traffic in front of our buildings. And that's just a reality, right? But I think that's absolutely correct. We need to find a survey for our remote learners right now and talk about whether or not they plan to return at any time soon. So that'll help us too. The pool testing, one of the things, and I heard the governor say after we'd already done it, and I've heard the commissioner say it, of try not to, tie your re-entry plans to any kind of metric. Well, too late now. Because now I have an agreement. And hindsight is 20/20. We learn continually every day of what we might do better or differently. And I say next pandemic, which for the love of anybody, I'm not coming back if that happens. We don't want that to happen, right? But I don't have any metrics yet. I want to really play with what other people are doing and what the recommendations of the professional community around that. And I said to somebody lately, when we talk about decisions and courage, right? It's not that I make decisions, and I try to do that every single day. I make I get every single one of these cases that come to my office first. I hear everything across the district. Yesterday, we had 7 or 8 positive cases. We had to actually quarantine a whole classroom of kindergarten, unfortunately, because that's just the reality. When you start to bring them in smaller groups, and with less space, it is almost impossible to think about yourself having a board in front of you that's 6 foot, or having a spike that nobody can come within that, of determining who is close. And so that's a great indicator for us. This is what happens. When we bring them in at closer distances, we're going to have positive cases, and when that happens, we lose people for a period of time, right? And so we know that's happening. I don't know yet with the metrics of the pool testing. That is to be seen. This is very new for us. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to use the resources that I get from the science community. As I said, I don't have a problem making decisions, and I certainly don't lack courage to make them, but I lack confidence sometimes when I have to make medical decisions that I'm simply not trained to do. And the guidance is not clear always. You get really conflicting guidance out there. And I'll give you an example of that. We hear the 3 to 6 foot. The DESE said 3 to 6 was fine. Well, if you read the American Academy of Pediatrics report, that was clear that 3 to 6 feet might be okay at the elementary level if you have certain conditions in. And we've met those conditions pretty well. And so but it doesn't recommend that for anybody from, 6th grade up. It says stay at 6 feet. That makes sense, but that kind of gets lost in the conversation sometimes. And so we were trying to do all of those things. And even though it's uncomfortable, I just want you to know I'm out here every single day trying to learn and trying to do the very best I can to advocate for your children, to make their experience better in a very difficult time. So thanks for the questions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Valerie Robin is next.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. And I understand the push for getting the younger kids back into the classroom. My question is specifically the high school, is addressing the high school. There was a great article in the Globe yesterday entitled "Less Excited, Less Prepared, Less Challenged. Mass high school students report big disparity in learning online versus in person." The data's there. We don't need to do a survey in town. As an anecdote, I have 2 high schoolers, and I was having a conversation with my junior about teacher recommendations. This is not about teacher recommendations, but the comment when we were talking about various different teachers, who she enjoys, she said, it's not the same. I don't really have a connection like you have when you go into the classroom. I think if you talk to any teacher, they know what I'm talking about. There's something special that happens when these kids are in the classroom and they're learning. Less excited, less prepared, and less challenged. To me, that's a tragedy. That just leads to other problems. I've reached out to various youth and asked you, but I'm trying to get to a point where I'd like to hear new sort of concrete ideas on how we're going to address this. Not in the fall, but starting now. We can't keep letting this go on. We start losing people right now. I can tell you stories about the other end of the spectrum in my professional practice of what happens post-high school. We don't want to be that. We don't want that to happen to any of our kids. I'm not attacking anybody. I know everybody's working hard. I take you at face value, Dr. Austin. You wake up, you think about this, you go to bed. We all are doing it. But what I'm asking is, we're in term 2. We keep asking the same questions, but I don't know the solution, but I'm looking to the educators, to the staff, come up with some ideas, try something. Let's do something. Let's not lose these kids. Less excited, less prepared, and less challenged. Forget about the less prepared, but the less challenged and less excited, that's a tragedy. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. I'm gonna turn this over to maybe one of the directors, maybe Katie or Mary Andrews. Somebody can help me with that with a minute. But the first thing that I want to say, and I want to qualify what our folks are doing. When we talk about 6 feet, obviously that's a challenge for us. We couldn't bring all of our high school students back, even at a 3-foot distance. In some classes, that's a real problem for us. And so, the reality of trying to bring them all back just isn't happening in today's world with the recommendations we're getting with that. I will also say that, you know, when we began the process and our planning in the summer, actually in the spring, we heard very clearly from folks that the connections between students and our teachers was really the paramount. That was the most critical piece that we had, that our students needed to have that daily contact with our teachers, and we committed to that. We committed to a process of ensuring that we were live streaming our courses, particularly at the secondary level, so that we did have that daily contact. And in fact, I think that it goes without saying, I think that our teachers have done a phenomenal job of taking that on. You know, we used our 10 days really wisely, that the commissioner gave us to provide professional development to our educators to get them prepared for that. We purchased all of the cameras, we got the equipment, we got everybody their laptops, et cetera, and they've embraced that to the extent possible. And in comparison, and I know that people send me articles about what another district is doing. I am so focused on what I'm doing in this district, I don't necessarily look at what everybody else is doing, but there's stuff to be learned. People are doing it differently in other places, and we do learn from each other. We do have regular communications with other superintendents, but I know that a lot of students, and this is what we gave up when we went live streaming, other districts have brought students in for more time. You know, if you look at some of the districts around us, they would bring in their students every other day, for instance, and do a full day, but then on the off days, they didn't have any connection to teachers. Everything was asynchronous, it was follow-up work. We took a different pattern and said every day we're gonna have connections with our teachers, and so we get it, but I'm going to turn it over to one of the directors that wants to talk a little bit about how do we ensure, because I think it's an incredibly valid point, that we have to get them engaged. And I know a lot of students are, but I also know a lot of students aren't. And that's a problem, and that's what's tragic. So what are we doing to help them become engaged or more engaged on a regular basis? So Rick, or one of the directors, if you want to take that on.
Sure, Paul, I'm happy to take that one on. And Val, thank you for the question. So Val, there were kind of three main parts to your question. One was the prepared part, one was the challenge part, and one was the excited part. And so I wanted to kind of address all three. So the one that I can speak kind of most clearly to is the prepared piece. And so our directors are, in fact, you know, taking a look at our standards and ensuring that students are receiving the preparation that they need at the high school in particular. In addition to, you know, all of the other factors, we very much have an eye to college readiness. So as a science director, you know, I am looking at my high school senior who is heading off next year to major in engineering. I am looking at my student who is preparing for a nursing program. I am looking at my student who is, you know, preparing to major in environmental science. So as directors, we know what those students need to be prepared in the future. And we all have lines to colleagues who are in teaching at the college level. So I have three friends that I communicate with regularly. One teaches engineering at WPI. One is a physical therapy professor at Boston University. Another teacher, professor friend who works at UC Davis in the environmental science. So I'm regularly communicating with them to ask about what the college experience is currently like, and again, keeping an eye on what we need to do to prepare students for college. So I can say with confidence that engineering student who is in AP this year is getting the experience that he or she needs in order to go on to major in engineering. I can say with confidence that our students in anatomy and physiology, or who are heading off to a nursing program, are getting what they need to be successful at the college level. And our environmental science students, again, heading off, you know, to the college level to study that, are getting the content that we need. So I do think we can speak with confidence about prepared. The second thing that you mentioned is challenged. And so we are right now trying to weigh the academics with the social emotional. So I do think after this pandemic is over, we should all pinky promise to rewatch the movie Race to Nowhere again. So again, our students in a typical year are, you know, stretched to the gill. In the current environment, given the social emotional needs of students, I do not think we can achieve that challenge to the same degree without compromising the student's social emotional health. So again, we are doing the very best we can, to prepare those students for college readiness. The challenge piece is something, particularly at the middle school. I'll be frank. This year, in order to make the spacing work, we did have to de-level classes. And so again, the challenge piece is something that we did have to make some compromises on, less so at the high school. At the high school, college readiness was our primary lens. At the middle school, we did make some choices in order to fit the students in. De-leveling was a choice that we have to make. So we are actively in conversations about what that looks like over time. So again, during our department meetings, I have one today actually, that is part of the conversation that we're having. Last point that you made was excited. And so all I can say is that is kind of the intangible that's very difficult in this environment. And I'll give you kind of an example from my own life. So we have been desperately trying to entertain our third grader and fifth grader. And I am at the extent of my crafting limits and creativity of trying to, engage my two children and to keep this fun and exciting. So last weekend we did a virtual escape room with our cousins out in California, and after it, both of my kids said, "You know what, Mama? You tried. Wasn't perfect, but you tried." And I do think that is true for many of our lessons. We are trying to make it exciting, make it engaging, and at the end of the day, I do think the students know when we're trying. So in chemistry this week, we tried an experiment where the students on their remote day were boiling eggs to learn about the properties of proteins and so on. Was it perfect? No. Was it the same as the experience they would get in our very sophisticated science labs with, which have his arm to the hilt with really terrific, sophisticated equipment? No. Did we try? Yes. And did students appreciate the effort? Yes. So again, I do think at the end of this, I think we can be confident in the preparation that our students are receiving. We are working to address the challenge piece that you brought up, which is a valid one. The excitement piece, we are trying. It is very difficult where so much communication is nonverbal. In a masked environment, we are losing. You all know your teenagers. So much can be gained by looking at their eye whirl or their facial expressions. It is harder to get to know students well in a masked environment because we're missing some of the nonverbal communication piece. And so again, over time, it has taken us longer to get to know students, but we are getting to the point. I have the ability to work with students in our campus greenhouse, and so we are still able to have some of those kind of hallway talk moments and chit chat and so on. And so it has taken me longer to get to know the students I work with, but we are getting there. And so Val, again, I think your points were well taken. I think that three-pronged approach, those are some of the discrete things that we are working on. Again, as directors, preparation is kind of our primary task, making sure your children are prepared, and the challenge and the excitement are the two areas that we're continuing to work on.
Maybe you can't give me the full answer. What I'm taking it was a little bit, and thank you for the very precise answer. I'm taking it a little step further and talking about the dynamic process and changes to be made now that you know what you know from term one, to sort of improve upon that. Particularly, the challenge and the excitement, I think, on some level go together. It sounds like on the prepared, you're very confident that you're taking the best approach that you could do. And that's all I'm saying is because nobody wants to lose anybody in the end of the day. And we have the ability to make changes. That's all. And I don't know what the answer is.
Absolutely valid. And just, to speak to that, know better, do better. So in the fall, again, not to be too science-centric, but I'm kind of a nerd, so forgive me for that. But in the fall, we had guidance from DESE that basically ruled out lab experiences. Since that time, we know that touched surfaces are not as big of a deal as we thought last summer. And so because of that, we can now consider doing things like in fourth grade, our lily dissection that we do during the plant unit. That is something that we are now planning to do because we know better and therefore can do better. again, some of our very rich elementary science hands-on experiences, we are actively working with teachers. Our 4th grade electric circuits unit, we doubled our usual order because students usually work in pairs. They will now work on it individually, and each student will get an individual Ziploc bag to kind of minimize the contact. So again, know better, do better, and we'll continue to work towards that. So thanks again for the
Thanks, Katie. We're going to have to go on, and Val, great questions, and you just gave us some food for thought about our motto moving forward. We're going to call it ACE. That's Achieve, Challenge, and Excite. And that has to be part of the second half. We'll give you credit for that. And great thinking. And, you know, I also want to take this opportunity to, you know, I know that our teachers are trying to do that every day. Absolutely. And, you know, I really do roll this out for all of them, all of our teachers who are really in the trenches every single day trying to make it right for the students and make the best of a bad situation. So I don't want that to go without being said today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to mention that we are coming up close to 10 o'clock, and with the rate that we are going, I'm not sure that we're actually going to be able to answer all of the questions. There's about 10 people with their hands raised, and I'm going to apologize in advance if we don't get to you, but remind you that we do have the coffee scheduled for tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. And to please keep your questions succinct as possible so that we can get to as many as we can before 10 o'clock. So the next person is Siobhan. So Siobhan, okay, I'm going to move on to Matt Cosman, and Siobhan will come back to you if you can get on.
12 Summit Drive. 3 quick points, and no need to respond so other people can get their thoughts in. We've talked about the green-gray. To me, that needs to go away. It shouldn't be talked about. It should be agreed on immediately. If the AGA wants people back in school, the CDC does not support including that as a metric. We've shown that kindergarten works. It is not a part of other towns. It should be eliminated in the next discussion, not talked about over the next couple of months. My second comment, if the first one is agreed on, it's moot, but it's not clear to me why 3 through 5 can't go back every other Wednesday, why that was tied to a green-gray metric, given that it's the exact same model, it's cohort A, cohort B in terms of number of kids in school. There's, from my perspective, no logic as to why that is tied to green-gray. Final comment, I hear that we need to plan for the fall. I would respectfully disagree that we need to think about a plan B. There needs to be one plan, which is having the kids full-time, full stop. And that needs to be the complete focus of the HEA, school committee, and yourself, Dr. Austin. Thank you.
Thank you. Libby, you want to go on to the next? He didn't ask for a response to that.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, Siobhan, do you want to try again?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't get it to work before. So
Can you get your video going?
I think it is. Can you see me? I'm seeing.
I can, Siobhan. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Great. So this is back to the high school level. I have 2 high schoolers. One thing that I do want to say, tears actually came to my eyes when you were saying that the teachers are trying, and I know the teachers are trying. My senior and her friends say, we just want to know that they care about us. The seniors don't think that the administration cares. The seniors feel like they are completely forgotten. They just keep hearing all the things that can't happen. And I know that there are things that you're trying to make happen, but I think there needs to be more communication and reach out to them in particular to say, hey, we realize this really is crappy and we do care about you. So that's just an aside. It doesn't need a comment, but it's, you know, it's heartbreaking. But my larger question is, the live streaming has enabled it so that kids don't need to go to school, basically. And I haven't heard you say what proportion of the high schoolers are home. I know it's more than 25% at this point. again, my senior only has like 2 to 4 kids in her class at any given day, like in person, because so many have chosen to be remote. And my concern is that that's not okay. And if we are looking to next year and the possibility, if people want to stay fully remote, are you thinking that you're going to continue streaming? Or are you thinking that you're going to make people choose to have a different remote only model? Because I really feel like there needs to be a different remote only model, because if you let people choose what they are to be fully remote or not, I think we're going to encounter a lot of the same stuff that we have this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Siobhan. Just a couple of comments on that. We do have, for full transparency, we have 420 students right now in full remote from the high school. We started with about 80, so we've substantially increased, there's no question. That breaks down to 20% at the 9th grade, 10th grade is 37, 11 is 32, and 12th is 42% of those students. And so we are monitoring that very closely. You're absolutely correct. We would rather have them in person. I do want to go back and say that, one, the governor made it very clear to us when we went into a state of emergency, or the DESE did, that we had to offer both. We had to make that choice of parents, that they could either choose remote or in person. And so what we did with that, we made a choice too of saying that we wanted to make sure we guaranteed to parents that we were going to provide all of our students with a Hingham teacher. That was our commitment, because many districts actually went with some of the state models where we could have paid for a remote learning remote learning program. We did not do that. We decided to live stream instead and keep all of our teachers connected. I trust our teachers. I know what they're able to do. And I still believe that our teachers are the best ones to continue to meet the needs of our students. But I don't know if anybody else wants to take any more of that question. Katie, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, if I could just add something, Siobhan. So again, on first glance, it would appear that the live streaming is mostly kind of protecting or providing equity for our students on remote, but it's also providing a safety net for your own children. So let's say, my kids play, basketball, for example. If they have to quarantine because one of their, team members from their basketball team quarantines, if we didn't have live streaming, they could go 10 days without instruction. And as you know, I'm sure from your own children's, rigorous schedules, that 2 weeks of completely missed instruction is very difficult to make up for. So again, the live streaming does, again, provide a safety net for all students at Hingham High. So, at Hingham High, we've had 70 members of our community, not all who have been in school, who've tested positive since January 1st. If we're back at 3 feet, each student over the course of 6 in-person periods would have 24 in-person close contacts. And so again, the live streaming is a protection for all students, so they're not missing instructions in the case they have to quarantine. Again, fortunately, our quarantine numbers have been relatively low, but we would have to plan for potentially high quarantine numbers once we're at 3 feet.
Thanks, Katie. We have time for one more question, Libby, I believe. We're just about 10 o'clock.
Okay, so this will be the last question from Ernola Stefani, please.
Hi, Ernola Stefani, One Highfield. Yesterday on the call, it came up that there's a lot of needs for paraeducators, substitutes, and when I went to look, there was also, I guess there's also a need for custodians for cleaning crews. Have you guys looked into, there's a lot of housekeepers right now that during COVID, they lost their clients. Have you looked into outsourcing housekeepers that would normally go into people's houses? I'm sure they would appreciate the opportunity to have a contract with the Hingham schools to go into cleaning instead of waiting around for a full-time custodian. And also, I'm sure parents would be happy to volunteer their times in the evenings and go and clean their children's schools, sanitize and whatever is needed. have you guys thought outside the box in terms of that, or are you just waiting for someone to be a permanent employee? To we just as a community, we're willing to help any way we can to get our kids back in classes as much as possible. So we have to think outside the box. I'm just wondering, what else can we do?
Thank you. What a great question, and some great ideas. First of all, I would say we think out box constantly, outside that box. Right now, I had to shut down last week into the middle school for 2 days because we lost operations staff. We actually hired outside contractors to come in so I could reopen that on Monday. And so we do that quite often. We are looking for full-time employees. I will say we are well understaffed right now, and that's true everywhere, right? That's true across the nation, that people are having a hard time finding qualified candidates for a lot of jobs. It's also hard. There are a lot of parents out there who would want to come in and perhaps be a para or be an educator of some sort that are also home with their own children, which creates another problem. I hate when the screen shifts because I was talking to you and now you're gone. There you are. I found you again. I'm sorry. And so right now we're searching for 16 to 20 paras to fill our classrooms to support that, which is another barrier. We are constantly looking. We're short administrative assistants. We've had a very hard time. My administrative assistant who wants to retire has had a really difficult time because I have not been able to find a replacement, which we've just done, and I'm going to announce that on Monday night, so that's very good. But we're really struggling, and so our HR department, which we've just got now, after I think I asked for about 5 years to get an HR department, and that really consists of one person who has been inundated this year, and I don't think I'd ever want anybody to start HR as a new person in COVID, but we've done that, and so there's always an incredible campaign to get as many people as possible. But we will continue to think outside the box and get people to work with us and to get parent volunteers, people that we could bring in to help us out. We do appreciate it. And I think you're absolutely correct. One of the things that we talked about with transportation is I believe that that's where we're going to need, when we're able to do that, we're going to need a chance to transport and find a way to get students in. And that's just one example. And so we will continually keep that in mind of where we can use parent volunteers and move forward. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Thank you, Libby. I know I went over.
Thank you, Dr. Austin, and thank you all for coming, and I invite you to join us again tomorrow night at 7 p.m.
Thank you, everyone. Great questions today. Great seeing you all.
I'll call this meeting. Oh, thank you, Michelle.
Chair, I'll make a motion to adjourn the subcommittee.
Thank you. Okay. And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, principals and department heads and parents.
Nice to see everybody.